up, everybody? Welcome back to Fantasy Football 201. Today's video is going to be a little more fun, but we are going to do a practical example of roster makeovers heading into Week 7. I'm going to go through 6 different rosters today of characters that you may be very well familiar with, but we're going to go through what I would do to do an extreme makeover of their rosters and set themselves up for success in the rest of the fantasy football season this year. So at this point in the video, you may be wondering which rosters are going to undergo an extreme makeover in this video. Well, now is the time for the big reveal. If you're interested in more content like this, as well as other content that talks a little bit more about strategy, you can see that in my video that was dropped on Monday. But please comment any questions that you have on my channel. I reply to all my commenters and want to help you guys win a fantasy football championship. So if you want your questions talked about in the show, if you want direct feedback, this is the channel for you. So subscribe below. Yes, so this roster construction was sent by Mr. Michael Scott. He is trying to invigorate life into his office fantasy football league. He has an idea to build the camaraderie with his coworkers, and he's trying out fantasy football to try to get his guys fired up and to really show his support for his coworkers. But they're just not all into it right now, and he's not sure if it's his delivery or what exactly is going on. But he wants our help to construct better fantasy football rosters to help out his teammates and also help out himself. What a great boss this guy is. But anyway, so we will get into some example rosters and what I would do, because the purpose of this is that there's a lot of fantasy football managers out there that they make a lot of roster mistakes, and they really could set themselves up in better positions of success if they just construct their bench and their team a little bit differently. So I'm going to go through some hypothetical moves that I would go through for each team. So before we go to each individual team, I just want to show you a snapshot of who is available on waivers in this league. So we're going to go through each of the positions. We're going to look at the guys that are available on waivers. So at quarterback, this is sorted by the players that are ranked in terms of their performance this season. You've got Geno Smith, Daniel Jones. Big one that stands out to me is Caleb Williams off that great game. He would be the one to target. Bo Nix is interesting. Jared Goff. These are all players that are available in this one quarterback 10-team league. So that's what you can keep an eye out for the quarterbacks. In terms of the running backs, someone in this league dropped Kareem Hunt inexplicably. So he is out there on his bye week. You've also got guys like Rico Dowdle. You've got the 2 Tampa Bay running backs that both had great performances in week 6. You've also got Tyrone Tracy, a little bit of a sleeper candidate. Braylon Allen, one of the handcuff heroes. You got a couple guys out there in this league that are of interesting value. Now let's go to the wide receivers. The wide receivers have some interesting players of note as well in this league. You've got Demario Douglas. He's one of the ones that I like the most. You've got Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, who were both dropped inexplicably as well. You've got Juwan Jennings. He had a 40-point game. Do you want to put any fab investment in him? The answer is no. But you've also got guys like Xavier Legette. You've got some interesting players out there as well at the wide receiver that can help these teams. And at tight end, we've got typical mainstay among the elite tight ends that has fallen off this year, Mark Andrews. You've also got Cole Kmet, one of the top performers from this past week. You've got some of the more safe security blankets like Tyler Conklin, Pat Freiermuth, etc. And then of defense, specifically, Minnesota was dropped on their bye. So this is going to be a hot waiver claim as well for this Minnesota Vikings team. So I'm going to go through the 6 teams in this league that are struggling the most and have the top 6 waiver priorities. And I'm going to give suggestions of what each of them should do. So we will go to the first roster on this list. This is Stanley. Stanley begrudgingly joined this fantasy football league. He really didn't want to. He's not super into sports, but he's doing fantasy football, but he's just not really putting a lot of effort into it. He's just not updating his roster. He left Patrick Mahomes Jalen Waddle, Travis Kelce, all there on his roster during his Week 6 matchup. You got to be checking your roster, Stanley. You just cost yourself that week. But he is 0-6 so far this season. He's really struggling. He needs a lot of help. This is a view of his bench. He's got Trevor Lawrence. He's got 2 tight ends on the bench, 3 in total. A lot of things that he can do to help his team. So what would I do if I were Stanley and I was struggling at 0-6 right now? First thing is you got to be checking your rosters and making sure that you're updating, because when you put 3 guys in there like that, this is what happens, and you end up being 0-6. But the number one waiver priority that I would get if I were him is to get Caleb Williams. And that's his number one priority. He's going to get him. But to me, I think Mahomes, as I've talked about, is got a lot of concerns as a elite fantasy football starter rest of season. And if I were him, I would bet on the upside of Caleb Williams. You want to start hitting on some of these prospects that are playing really well of late to try to turn your team around. And then you could use Mahomes as a trade candidate, which we will talk about later on. So first priority I would use is to get Caleb Williams. Pro tip as well. So if you are in a team where you do not have an elite kicker, then my first waiver priority would be to drop Cam Little in this case. Cam Little is, he's had some good games, but he is not a kicker that is going to need to be consistently rostered because he plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which you haven't watched their offense. They're not very good. So Cam Little can safely be dropped. And in my opinion, what I would do is use the first claim to drop Cam Little and then pick up Caleb Williams, because what this does is it does give you some flex options that you can use and build your depth. And then Stanley can pick up a kicker later on by seeing how things develop through the week. So that's something that I like to do, is to drop the kicker first. In this situation, if you don't need him, Cam Little will still be out there by the end of the week if he wants to pick him back up, or he can get a kicker that's a little bit better of an option moving forward. I would also, for him, prioritize getting some running backs on his team. He needs some depth. He needs to build some more consistency with his players. So I would be trying to target the Tampa Bay running backs, see what you get with them. Tyrone Tracy is interesting as well. And then Kamani Vidal. These are all high upside plays that you can take on and kind of see what happens, because maybe those could be the guys that can help you build your roster around moving forward. If you want to look at more safe options, he could go with Kareem Hunt as well. But since his first claim is going to be on Williams, it's more than likely that Hunt will be gone by the time it comes back around to him. And then at wide receiver, he can go a couple different ways as well. Demario Douglas, I think that would be a very good option for him. Gives you a very safe floor. Can be used as a spot start for a while, especially while Ayuk and Waddle are struggling. And Josh Downs is another one that I like that he can target as well. Michael Wilson too, but just for a short stint. So some good receivers that he can look at for building his roster. So what can he do in terms of improving his team? So he can trade a couple of guys here that I think could help him get some more instant value. Patrick Mahomes is somebody that is not really helping him right now. And I think the best case scenario is to try to trade him to a team that can afford to roster him and flip him later if he turns the season around. If not, just cut him, and it's not costing them because they're not relying on him as their starter. So that is one option. Brandon Ayuk, I think, can also be flipped to a more consistent receiver who has a little bit more of a defined role in that offense. And then Jamison Williams is somebody that he could sell high on potentially. But those are his 2 top receivers, so he needs to be careful that he doesn't just deplete his entire receiving core to make this move happen. But his biggest needs are depth. He needs some wide receivers, and he needs a quarterback. So he's got a lot of things that he can fix, but hopefully we can help him by starting off by getting his waiver claims in, get Caleb Williams, get some more depth on his team. All right, next roster we're going to look at is Phyllis. Phyllis also was not super enthused about doing fantasy football, but she did it because she wants to, build some camaraderie with her coworkers and try to make the office a better place. But now her team is kind of struggling. She got off to an okay start, doesn't really know a whole lot about football, but now she's 2-4, and she's got some talented players, but just has had some unfortunate luck, and it's not been working out for her to translate to a lot of wins. But in her situation, she does have some good players to work with, so she doesn't need to make a total makeover of her roster. The first thing that I would do if I were her is to pick up Demario Douglas. She's got the second waiver claim. She should be able to get him. And I think that for her, after you get past her starting receivers, Smith, Sutton, and Reed, there's really not a lot there. She's got Jerry Jeudy as the fourth receiver and then no other wide receivers. She's going to need a little bit more than that. She does have some RB depth as well, so that could be useful for her in terms of trade chips. That can be helpful as well with trades with her coworkers. She also has the ability to need another tight end as well, so she could put a claim in on Kmet, but I think given her situation, she probably wants a tight end that could help her a little bit more in the short term. So she could bet on Mark Andrews. She also could look into getting Grant Calcaterra if Goddard is not there, because Goddard is ultimately probably her best option of the guys that she has on her team, but she could plug in Calcaterra if in the event that Goddard is not good to go for this upcoming week. So those are some interesting options for her as well to help build her team. But really the thing that she needs to do is she needs to get a consistent receiver, so Demario Douglas would be the number one claim for me to get on her roster. And then trade candidates. So Javonte Williams is a good trade candidate. He's on her bench right now. I think that if she could flip him to a team that needs a running back and get a good receiver back, I think that could be a good deal for her. So we'll take a look at Stanley's roster. Stanley is in need of some running back depth on his team. He has some guys that are of interest. Could he be interested in Javonte Williams? In my opinion, I don't think so, because I think that he doesn't really have the receivers to give her. But we'll see what some of the other coworkers look like and see if there's some potential move there for Phyllis to make. She needs wide receivers and she needs tight ends on her team. That's her biggest voids that she needs to fill. All right, next we have Pam. Pam is she's got a pretty solid team. She's a smart girl. She did her homework. Made sure she researched some of her players before doing fantasy football. She got Lamar Jackson. She got CeeDee Lamb. She took some high upside swings on guys like Brian Thomas Jr. that have worked out for her. She also got Baker Mayfield on waivers too. So she's got some good pieces to work with on her roster, but some unfortunate luck and some injuries. She left James Cook in her lineup. Man, that's the kind of thing that Jim would be disappointed in, Pam. You left James Cook in and you didn't have his handcuff. But you also had a kicker on your bench. You have Jason Sanders on a bye, and you could have picked up Ray Davis. So she missed that important detail. So for her situation, she's got a lot of good players on her team. She has a pretty solid receiving core that she can roll with. CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Zay Flowers. That's a pretty solid top three. She's also got James Cook and Connor, which Connor has been a little bit iffy of late, but James Cook, when he's healthy, should be reliable. But what she needs is insurance, and she needs some more running back insurance specifically. So in her case, what I would do with her number one claim is to take a shot on Tyrone Tracy, hope that he can break out and take that role from Devin Singletary. Maybe he can emerge as a third running back that she could plug in. I would personally be trying to take that chance if I were her. She's 3-3. She's got a little more wiggle room to take some chances on things like that. I would get Tracy 1. And I would drop Isaiah Likely to get him. And then some other options she could make as well. So she doesn't need Jason Sanders. She also does not need Quentin Johnston, because her receivers are so good that I don't think that she would really ever... Johnson is clearly the sixth. And although I do like Johnson, I think that she would be better served to address her running back depth instead of rostering him. So two other running backs that I would try to get if I were her to give her insurance in her backfield is Ray Davis from the Buffalo Bills and Amari DiMercato from the Arizona Cardinals. She could get basically the two handcuffs to both of her running backs. I think this is a solid option for her to pursue, because both these guys are dealing with health issues right now. And since there's not a lot of great running backs out there, she could go with a Kareem Hunt to just give her a safe floor as well. But if she wants to set herself up in position to always have those two backfields, not have to worry about injuries, she could go with Davis and DiMercato to help her in the interim as well, and hope that her two starting running backs can get healthy. So trade candidates for her, Baker Mayfield is a good trade candidate, because although Baker is playing great, he's never going to be starting in front of Lamar Jackson except for his bye week. But in my opinion, I don't think it's worth rostering 2 quarterbacks that are great just for having 1 week where you can plug them in, because there's just so many variables of things that can happen. I would personally be trying to flip Baker into a piece that could be used in a trade that can help her roster. So this gave me a potential fake trade that she could make with Stanley. So Stanley is in need of a quarterback. As we looked at earlier, his quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. He's going to try to pick up Caleb Williams, but he needs somebody on this week 7 so that he can get a W this week. So this is a perfect opportunity for Pam to make a deal with him and to trade Baker Mayfield to Stanley, help him get a win this week, and then she can get a good flex option in return. So I was thinking of some potential moves that she can make with his roster. So one trade that I like that I think works well for both these guys, Baker Mayfield and Zay Flowers to Stanley, and Pam gets Brandon Ayuk and Patrick Mahomes. So this is a little bit of a risk for Pam to give up on Zay Flowers after a game like this, because he looked great. He got a ton of targets this week, but we've also seen him be totally shut out. And Ayuk is in a similar situation too, but what she could do, and she honestly probably doesn't even need to include Mahomes in this deal. She could just get Ayuk for him straight up. I think that might be a little bit much, but I think that a Jameson Williams for Baker Mayfield is a good option. So she's got 2 different trades she could look into. She could try to flip her quarterbacks, use Mahomes as somebody that she could flip his value when he has a better game, because she knows deep down that Lamar is always going to be the quarterback that's going to be starting. Or what she could try to do is just trade Baker straight up for Jameson Williams, and then this gives Stanley a player that he can start. And if he wants a receiver to go with that, I think it would be a good idea to give Xavier Worthy potentially, because that would be something that she could do as well. So she's got some trade options that she could look into with Stanley. I think ultimately, just spitballing this, the best option for her is to probably trade Baker and Worthy for Jameson Williams. I think that would be a good deal for her. And then that gives Stanley something to work with as well. Because ultimately he needs to get a quarterback. She needs to get some more depth and insurance. And this gives her a good piece that can be used to plug in and essentially replace that Quentin Johnson spot. She'll have 5 receivers that are reliable. She would get Lamb, Wilson, Flowers, Jameson Williams, and Brian Thomas. So that gives you a lot of different options at receiver there. That's a good deal for her and a good deal for Stanley too. So it works out. All right. Next we have Dwight. Dwight is, he's that guy that he gets really into fantasy once he starts, because he loves the competition, and he makes all these moves. He makes a lot of trades, but he makes some dumb decisions at the same time because he just overthinks things. Like he started Colby Parkinson one game on his bench right now over George Kittle, and that cost him the week because he looked at the matchup. He bought into the Anthony Richardson hype. He bought into the Zeke Elliott hype. He chased Mike Williams after one game. He's making some trades. He's making some deals that are helping him, but he's just not putting it all together. So what does Dwight need to do to improve his team? And the biggest thing is, one, to just stop overthinking it and put your guys in that are solid. But what he needs to try to do is to try to get a 2-for-1 deal or a 3-for-2 that just gives him a little bit more consistency, because his bench is pretty weak. But he does have some pieces that are intriguing that could potentially work. So Anthony Richardson is a solid trade candidate. If somebody wants to roster him, maybe they could give him a fringe bench piece that could be helpful for him. He needs to really just make over his whole bench altogether. Those 5 guys all at the bottom are people that can be dropped. So he needs to go for some safe options on the waivers. I would recommend Kareem Hunt for him. Get a running back that is a solid, safe value that you can put in, especially with the Brian Robinson injury. And give yourself some more running back depth, because when your third running back is Zeke Elliott, and you don't have any other running backs, that's kind of a problem. And I have another potential trade idea that we will look at in a little bit when we get to the next roster. But Brian Robinson, he really could use his handcuff, Austin Eckler, in case Brian Robinson is not able to play like he didn't play in week 6. So we'll look at some options that Dwight can pursue there as well. All right, so for this next roster is Kelly Kapoor. Kelly is competitive. She likes the idea of competition in fantasy football, and made a lot of smart moves this year. She got Malik Neighbors. She got Josh Allen, Sam Laporta. She's taking some high upside swings, but again, overthinking things a little bit too much. She put Kirk Cousins in off of his great week 5, but he didn't replicate it in week 6, and now Josh Allen is on the bench. She also put Jake Ferguson in over Sam Laporta. That didn't work out for her. So she's got some great players on her team, but could use some trades to help improve her overall roster. And much like Dwight, try to get some guys that'll be a little more consistent for you. Try to make a 2-for-1 deal, or a deal that works better for both sides. So this is where I came up with some potential ideas that could work. Kelly, I see her as the type that would make a lot of trades in fantasy to try to, steal from her coworkers and try to get the best deal possible for her. So what are some deals that I think could work out well for her? So she has Austin Eckler on her bench, and Eckler is in a position where he's never really going to be the confident starter because she has Walker, Barkley, and Mason. Unless some of them are on a bye, then Eckler is really going to be the 5th best once Aaron Jones is healthy, and David Montgomery. So Eckler is really in a position where he can be moved for a receiver to help her team, because she's relying on Debo. Darnell Mooney doesn't really have a lot other than that. She's also got Amari Cooper, so she's got some decisions to make with him. He's been disappointing. So with Dwight, I'm going to propose a trade between him and Kelly to trade Austin Eckler to Dwight in exchange for George Pickens. So this is a good move for Kelly, in my opinion, because George Pickens is the number 1 wide receiver in Pittsburgh. He's had some target share that you like, but just the overall offensive scheme, the quarterback play hasn't really translated to great games. But I do feel that George Pickens is going to have some better games as the season moves along. And it's a smart move for her to take an upside swing with him. And Dwight is in a position where he needs a running back, and he really needs the handcuff to Brian Robinson in case he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And honestly, she could command even more than this. In addition to getting George Pickens, she could try to get another piece as well. Maybe a Demarcus Robinson. She wants to take an upside swing there. I wouldn't really advocate for that. There's not really a lot of other great moves that she can pursue. But I think what I would do if I were her is start with trying to get George Pickens. And I think this is something that Dwight would do to get another running back on his team. So that's a good potential move for her. So what can she do with Amari Cooper? So there's a couple options that she could try to pursue with him. She does need a receiver, but Amari Cooper is not reliable. So she could be trying to flip him for somebody that gets a little more volume that could be of interest. So some options that could work for her. She could try to look at Zay Flowers for Cooper, but I would rather have Flowers, so I don't really think that would be a deal that Pam would want to make with her. She could also look to try to trade for Cortland Sutton. I think that would be a solid move. Cortland Sutton is locked in as a 1, and maybe Phyllis could be intrigued by the idea of Amari Cooper because he's a well-known fantasy football player that she might even know if she's a Cowboys fan. I've no idea what team she's actually a fan of, but Amari Cooper is a little more well-known than Sutton. So that could be a good deal for her, but let's look and see if there's some better deals later that could help Kelly flip Amari Cooper for a more consistent receiver for her. She also could pursue some options as well with upgrading the tight end, flipping either Jake Ferguson or Sam Laporta for another piece as well. So because she has two solid options, she could look to use one of them to flip. I would recommend trying to flip Ferguson, but you could probably get more for Laporta. So those are some interesting ideas she could be thinking about as well. All right. Next, we have Michael Scott himself. Classic Michael move to send a question about a fantasy football roster for his office, but really ultimately be kind of concerned more about helping his own team. So Michael is that guy that really obnoxious. He bought into the Christian McCaffrey hype. He got the number 1 overall pick, and then he proceeded to tell everybody throughout the whole week leading up to fantasy football week 1 from the draft about how, I got Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to win this year. And then he had hurt his Achilles, and Michael was not smart enough to pick up Jordan Mason, and now he's essentially lost that 101 pick. Very disappointed about that. He bought into the Devon Achane hype. He bought into the Kyle Pitts hype. He had DeAndre Swift on his bench multiple weeks when he went off. He drafted Aaron Rodgers because he thought he could turn his career around, which, newsflash, he's not. And he also had Brock Bowers, but he has Kyle Pitts, and he's in this discussion of whether or not he's going to start Bowers or Pitts every week with some internal conflict in his head. Yeah, it's just a mess. And Michael is 2-4 this season, so he's stressed out about what is he going to do with his roster. So the thing that he needs to do is he needs to get some more consistency with his running backs. He's got some guys that are injured right now. He's got Nick Chubb, which is a solid upside swing to hold on to, but maybe he could move him for somebody that could help him more in the short term. He has Chandler, which is a solid pickup idea because he is in a position where he could start next week, but it's a risk to take. The thing that interests me with Michael is that he has Christian McCaffrey and Ty Chandler, and Kelly has Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. So could there potentially be a deal here that could work well for both sides? And if I were Kelly, what I would try to do is offer Aaron Jones for Christian McCaffrey. Yes, this could be a difficult sell, but we don't really know the Christian McCaffrey timeline. And this is actually a interesting trade idea that either one of them could use leverage on by tossing in another player to intrigue the other one into ultimately getting CMC. But they both have each other's handcuffs. There could be a deal to help each other out there in a way that works. So Michael is not using Christian McCaffrey, and Jordan Mason is of great value to him. But because Mason is the one playing, and this is all assuming that his AC joint sprain is not going to be a problem. So he could look to Kelly could try to get CMC from Michael and then give him the handcuff that he needs in Aaron Jones. So I think this would be a very smart move that she can make. I could see her convincing Michael to do this because he's an idiot. And he would take Aaron Jones, give up CMC. This is a fake trade that I think could potentially work. And while she's at it, she proposes another trade to him that I really like that is a good option as well that Michael could fall for, is Ladd McConkey for Amari Cooper. So Ladd McConkey is a rookie for the Chargers, if you don't know who he is. He is getting a good target share. He looks like the number 1 receiver on that team, but he has not had any breakout games. Michael is one of those guys that, he buys into the Amari Cooper hype from his time with the Cowboys. He knows all about him. He thinks that Amari Cooper will get traded to the Chiefs, and he is going to put all his eggs in his basket and gives Ladd McConkey. And honestly, if Amari Cooper does not get traded, I like Ladd McConkey rest of season. And Amari Cooper could get traded to a situation that is not beneficial for him. So this is actually a deal that I think would work out well for Kelly to trade Cooper to Michael and then get Ladd McConkey back. And to be honest, I think she could get even more. She could maybe try to get Nick Chubb from him too, because ultimately he's not helping him win. And she's convincing him, you're getting a number 1 receiver. And Michael, one of those managers will fall for something like that. So, yeah, this is a hypothetical example of what you can do with these with your fantasy football rosters. So we'll keep this short and cut it off here. But if you have any ideas that you want to run by me, part of the intent of making this video and this concept is I get a lot of questions about what should you do with your rosters, what players to drop, who should you try to trade. So this is an exercise of just spitballing ideas between some hypothetical characters in a league where they could make trades that benefit each other. And it ends up being a deal that works well for both sides. So the beauty of fantasy, though, is that you can often convince somebody to make a deal that's lopsided in your favor. And you can find managers that are desperate, teams that are 2-4 or worse, that are going to be looking to move some guys that had a rough stretch and can be helpful. So if you want to see more of the specific strategy of that, check out my video that was released Monday, the Week 7 buy low, sell high waiver pickups. But this is a good exercise to consider moves that you can look at from my perspective that would be good trades for these teams. So I hope you enjoyed this. And if you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment your questions for the fan mailbag this weekend. All right, we'll see you guys next time.